They made this little machine with a sliding head, and you could adjust the time of the playback and whatever. And I stuck it in the game and right into the circuit of the audio, and we played it, and it was on like, it would repeat echo over and over and over again without diminishing much, and it created this background sound. And that's where I got the idea to use it on Flash, like an ambient set. Before that, electronic games were silent when you played them, except for, the gurgles and beeps, and then later a little speech here and there.
Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could describe the decision of why Atari decided to stop making vector games. What was the whole...
Because they cost us a lot of money. They broke all the time. He asked why Atari decided to stop making vector games. And having one who programmed quite a few of them, they looked great, as you know, look at them, the sharp graphics for the time, but they were very unreliable. The monitors would burn out all the time. Transistors were always busted. Deflection amps were always breaking in them. Does anybody here who owns one? Probably knows. And I think Major Havoc was one of the last ones. Star Wars was the last one, right? Was the Star Wars the last one? And it probably would have, it probably would have sold a lot better if they weren't vector games.
And
I'm not sure.
The vector originally came in when there wasn't that much resolution in the regular raster scan games, because the electronics got cheaper and you could make the graphics, much sharper. The pain that he talked about, the vector drawing monitors were expensive, custom, and 8-power and got hot and died.
There was a lot of software in Major Havoc, and it moved forward to protect the monitor against trying to blow out. It still didn't work.
Especially when we designed like I remember the first time we tried to blow the desktop up.
Blue monitor.
Oh my god! not only did it blow, it blew up the entire monitor.
The way the monitors work is just there's like a 3x3 grid, and yours is sort of in the middle, so you could theoretically draw anywhere on this grid. And so when you blew that thing up, and Major Havoc did too, the parts would fly. They'd fly into this off the screen, and originally they would try to draw them. So it was trying to draw this beam around the back edge of the monitor. The deflection amps would just pop. My tech was like, screaming. I was like, "Stop doing that."
Questions? Yeah.
This is an open question for everybody. How old were you when you realized you can make a living creating games?
I still haven't.
I went to Santa Clara University as a mechanical engineer, and I got recruited. They had on-campus recruiting, and I had choices of FMC, Bechtel, PG&E, and this company called Atari, and it was like hands down. My parents would still. I remember my dad saying, because he had worked as an engineer at Bechtel, and he goes, "Why did you pick that company, Atari?" And I said, "Oh, it looks like a much funner company." So I mean, I guess I just lucked into it right out of college.
So when we started Atari 72, June 72, I figured it would last maybe 2 years at the most, and I'd go back to work at Apex. I guess when I first realized that it might last was when Pong became a hit, and it seemed like it would last maybe 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, when Warner bought us, we got all this money. I figured, God, this is going to work out. But I didn't really believe it was going to happen until I guess 76.
So that's so in 76, Atari was moving from completely hardware-based games to processors. I think I was the fourth. You can't say I was the fourth or the fifth microprocessor guy hired. In fact, I went there to interview, and I interviewed with Steve, and then they turned me down because they said I wasn't a very good hardware engineer. And I called back and said, "But I wasn't interviewing for a hardware engineer." They go, "Yes, you were." So I went back again. And they said, "Oh, he can program," and I was one of the early guys there to put code in. Put code to replace hardware, which is actually kind of ironic because I think the boards got bigger. It's smaller. And I thought, oh, it'd last a couple years as well, and then I'd go do something, like go work for
Which phone company?
Phone company. I ended up working for a phone company, but my degree was in large-scale computers. I was going to go work for Amdahl or IBM or something. And my last year in college, I discovered microprocessors, these little 4-bit parts, and loved it. So Atari was, once I got there, I said, oh, this is fun, I can do this forever. So it's actually 15 years, I think.
So Atari had this fitness game, right? That was kind of a precursor to a lot of the fitness games we see now, like with Wii and DDR and stuff. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Did you have a patent on that by any chance?
Oh, God.
Which one?
It was a bicycle game that had a fan on the front.
BMX Heat?
BMX Heat. Is that it?
Was there one with a mat as well? It was like a running game or some
That was
kind?
Nintendo.
Which one?
That was Nintendo that did.
I don't remember.
I don't recall that as being an Atari product or
Well,
prototype.
I did have
The
a,
closest to fitness in the old days, like 74, 75, it was, football was it. Now, the ongoing project, remember the boxing game? We kept for years trying to build a controller that moved like we were boxing, and after years and generations, and finally we got the controller that was so bulletproof, then the cabinet started falling apart. So I never saw a boxing game.
I can tell you about the first exercise video game we didn't make. It was part of the end of my career at Atari. We got a letter, Sean Mayer, the Bakey, the heart surgeon, sent a letter to Ross, Chairman Warner, who then sent it to Manny, who then sent it to Ray, then I get it. And it went along the lines of something like, the Americans don't get enough exercise, video games contributes to heart disease, why don't you make a video game that will make people healthier? So I wrote a response that copied, this is before email, so I sent a physical response to everybody on the list at once, so they couldn't stop it. And I basically said that the idea of Pong is to play in athletics while maintaining a firm grip on a can of beer. Play tennis, play ping pong, this is, the whole idea was, I refused to do it. And that was the last they ever sent me any of those letters.
there was a controller sitting in my office for a long time, which was a bowling ball for a trackball, so you could put it on your feet and go like that, but we could never get into a game. And it really was like after about 10 minutes of trying to play a game with that on the ground, just forget it. Yeah.
What was Atari's thinking beside in regards to cabinet construction, the particle board versus plywood, shipping costs, ease of getting games in and out of location?
Well, that was PS Earl that happened to be nearby, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there was a continuing, ongoing discussion on, the price of the game, and you'd like to build stuff out of plywood.
Well, if you turn Nolan loose, they want the pirate glass.
I have my computer space.
Yeah. There was a cabinet for, I don't know if it was Pong, one of the angular two-player cabinet. The problem with fiberglass was you're limited to production. If you had a hit, you were in trouble. You couldn't ramp up production.
But so plywood versus particle board is always a cost issue. Everyone liked plywood, It's just, and we actually built one system, at least one system, the arcade, the one that had a triple hung in it, that had a steel frame with the plywood panels bolted on, so that thing was damn close to indestructible.
That was my game.
But it was too pricey, and it was meant to last forever. It wasn't a big hit.
Someone just sent me a picture.
They say they want to buy plywood, but when you give them two prices, they'll go for the cheaper one.
I just got pictures of one of those still working. It surprised me. The triple hunt with the gun.
Yeah.
The relationship between Bally Midway and Disney with Tron is kind of surprising in that Atari was in California with Disney. Was Atari approached at any time to negotiate the Tron license?
I don't recall it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
What year did that happen? Is that at the rate?
Yeah, when was it?
82.
Yeah, that's just our time.
Sorry, so who knows? You might have. I do know we had a meeting. We flew down there in '81. They had a high-level meeting in '82 with '81. The last thing I did with Ray Kassar and Jet and the whole thing. So there was contact there.
Oh, but our sounds, I did a bunch of sounds for that. Actually, they sent guys up to record for the movie. They sent people up there, recorded, I walked them through the whole engineering thing, and they were recording sound